Really happy to have all three of you here today. I think I can speak for everyone when saying we're all very excited to hear the insight you have in the professional world for us in terms of networking and mentoring. Excuse my nasal voice today. I am homesick, but we're going to get started with your bios. So I'm going to just read these off so everyone knows who the three of you are. So Lee Wammer, Lee has spent almost 20 years in a range of business roles in the technology industry. He started his career at Microsoft, an opportunity that began with an on-campus recruiting event at Penn State. He got an MBA from the University of Chicago and spent several years in technology investment banking in London and San Francisco. He currently leads business development and strategic partnerships for several business units at LinkedIn. While at the Collegian, Lee was a reporter, an AE, and a business manager. Okay, Lean. Lean is the director of business development at Flytedesk, a technology firm that bridges the gap between national advertisers and college media.
Oh, Megan, Megan, you're muted.
Hold on. Apologies.
Oh,
it's bouncing around on me. It's bouncing around on me. Sorry, that was me playing heavy-handed trying to take care of background audio. I apologize.
You're all good. Where did I stop at? What did you hear?
A little bit about Lean.
Okay, all right. So
And
Lean is the
start
director.
over on Lean.
I will do that. Lean is the director of business development at Flytedesk, which is a technology firm that bridges the gap between national advertisers and college media. She spends most of her time working with hundreds of college media organizations across the nation to help them launch new products, optimize their operations, and drive revenue. Her role at Flytedesk has enabled her to continue working with the Collegian's team even after she left the organization in 2018. Prior to Flytedesk, Lean worked at the Daily Collegian within the sales department and then took over as the business manager in 2017. During her time at Penn State, she double majored in finance and telecommunications, which allowed her to see both sides of the news industry. She's a college media nerd at heart and spends a lot of her time thinking about ways to continue moving student-run media groups forward. And last but not least, Chuck. Chuck Hall is a business coach and consultant who works primarily with business leaders and their teams to help them achieve optimal performance. Although he steadfastly refused to take any business courses at Penn State despite his journalism advisor's pleading, he now makes his living in business, not journalism. On the Collegian, Chuck was a reporter, copy editor, assistant campus editor, and columnist. So great. Again, thank you three so much for being here. We're really excited to ask you some questions today. I have some questions prepared, of course, and then we'll be able to open it up to our Collegian members here to ask you some of their own. So to get started, could you each kind of describe your jobs and the day-to-day and how that is a transition from what it was like at Penn State? Chuck, would you like to go first? I see you're unmuted.
Oh, yeah, sure. I just left it unmuted from before, so I guess that makes me guilty. So, day to day, my job, even before the pandemic, I spend a lot of time on Zoom. My work with business leaders puts me in a lot of one-on-one meetings to help advise them on their business, to help them with their personal growth, to help them with their communication, to help them with their leadership. Along with that, I spend a lot of time in social media and reading news sites. So part of being a good advisor is I have to know what's going on in the world, and I have to know what's going on with people. So, Lee, you will appreciate this. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, building networks, connecting with people, sharing my insights. So I think the way that connects to what I did at Penn State is being a reporter on the Collegian and being a student. I was all about learning, all about asking people questions, trying to understand things, trying to help make things better. And so that, I would say, is the connection to what I do today.
Great, thank you. Lean, do you want to go next?
Yeah, of course. Well, first, thank you for having me. Super excited to be with you all today. Yeah, I think for me, the transition was pretty smooth. I used to work in college media and now I work with college media. So a lot of the skills that I learned at the Daily Collegian were immediately applicable, which was really sweet. But day to day, I spend most of my time working with college media organizations on developing new products. So whatever the market is asking for, we're kind of helping them build these products, getting them onboarded on our technology. So trying to give them a lot more, resources and tools that they could utilize to grow revenue. But just, yeah, doing fun stuff with college media, just helping them continue to move forward, which is really fun.
That's awesome. Lee.
Cool. So my job, we basically build and manage partnerships with other companies that LinkedIn works with in the space. And so like, if there are companies, it's generally not end customers. So my team doesn't sell products to customers, but like, if there's another company whose products work alongside our products or who help distribute our products and get sort of additional reach without sort of direct sales, that's what my team does. And so that kind of consists of, like, on a day-to-day basis, there's like kind of 3 buckets of things that entails. So one is like developing the strategy, and that could be like developing strategy for working with specific partnerships. And when I say partnerships, like, just to give you some examples of like, LinkedIn sells recruiting products and we have a job board. And so we work with other companies like Workday or Oracle or other job boards that where we're sort of like working together to make our products work together more smoothly. So developing the strategies for how to work with those partners, as well as like taking the learnings that we get from working with those partners and forming the product strategy for LinkedIn overall. That's one bucket. Second bucket is like is basically like working on deals and negotiating deals. And the third bucket is once you've completed a deal, basically managing those partnerships and making sure that they're sort of delivering the value and the metrics that you expected, and to the extent that they're not, sort of crafting plans to make sure that you are getting value out of the partnerships. That's kind of that's generally what I'm doing on a given day.
Awesome. That's all very interesting. And I think I can definitely speak for everyone. How did you get to where you are today? And did the Collegian help influence those career decisions along that path? Feel free to jump in, whoever wants to take it, or if all three you want to answer.
You're gonna have to tee people up, otherwise we'll all look at each other. Oh, we're all so polite. That's how we got to where we are today.
Yeah.
Chuck, did you want to jump in or?
No, go ahead.
Cool. All right. Gosh, I mean, how did you get to where you are today? It's like a series of like, I mean, some of it, it's like, there's a saying, it's like the harder I work, the luckier I get. Like, it's a series of like lucky events, but also like by sort of working hard and focusing on the right things, like you tend to put yourselves in positions. I'll share 2 anecdotes, one not about the Collegian and one about the Collegian, but like, just when you talk about like the fact that like, sometimes like just showing up is like half the battle. I mentioned like where I got my first, it was called a co-op. It was like 6 months where I went away from Penn State and interned at Microsoft. It was at a career fair at the Bryce Jordan Center, and I was walking around, and like I was a business major, and like a lot of the booths there were not relevant to me. It was like engineering majors, things like this. And I remember that being a marketing major. And Microsoft had this booth, and I went to the booth and checked it out, and like they were looking for finance people, and I was like, oh, well, I'm not a finance major, an accounting major, and like I started to walk away, and the woman who was working at the booth, she was like, wait, no, come back. Like, we'll accept marketing majors too. Like, why don't you give it a shot? And so like I submitted my resume, and I'm like, holy shit, what if that woman had not called me back? Like, how different would my life be? And so a big part of it is about just like, getting out there, taking shots, and I could go through more events in my career, but like there's an element of like, being there and like putting in the work that's always kind of a common theme, but there's also an element of like, sometimes like random doors open. As it relates to like Collegian specifically, I'll share just one anecdote that I think was maybe the best thing or one of the things that sticks with me is what I learned in the Collegian as a reporter. And I was a reporter before I was on the business side, which like Megan's probably looking quizzically because she's like, I didn't know Lee was a reporter. But like as a freshman, I tried my hand as a reporter and before I went and joined the business side. And it was interesting. I never had an idea for like what stories to cover. Like I was kind of like I would always procrastinate and like and like I didn't put like the work in to like think of the idea. And I remember that like so you could either choose your ideas of what to report on, or you would like get ideas assigned to you. And I never like had good ideas and choices for that. And so like I always got assigned ideas. And like I remember the ideas I got assigned were always like pretty boring. Like and it was a lesson to me. Like I still remember to this day. I'm like, you really have to be proactive about saying what you want to do and like charting what you want to do in your career and like deciding, having conviction around that, going after it. And because like if you don't have conviction around what you want to do or an opinion about what you want to do, somebody will assign you something to do and like you usually won't like it as much as if you had like been proactive about like coming up with your own opinion on it. So that's like a lesson that it was 25 years ago now, I guess, if I was a freshman-ish, but like I still remember that, and I think it's a good lesson for navigating one's career.
Thanks, Lee. I love that anecdote about being proactive and everything. So that's really great. Lane, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think my time at the Daily Collegian had such a huge impact on my life. Like, I mean, my team came from college media, and we sit down sometimes and reflect and think like how different our life would be if we didn't join these media organizations, which by the way, I also thought I meant to go to the editorial one and I ended up on the business side by mistake. So to the business team, like people don't think there's a business side to the Collegian. So like really emphasize that, because definitely same thing happened here. But really happy that I ended up joining the business team because the skills that I learned there and and I think I got really lucky with the time that I joined the Daily Collegian. I think it was like a really transformational time because I think that time is when we started really seeing ourselves as a multimedia organization, and the fact that you guys are still in that kind of space and continuing to grow the organization in that fashion is really, really awesome. But that helped me realize that I really like the intersection between journalism and technology. I think the Daily Collegian gave me a lot of opportunities where I got to play around with that. Like the audience engagement team was launched around my time. The Spotlight app was launched around my time. So it was like really fun for us as a team to kind of like dig into what technology looks like at a media organization. And that's why I work at a tech firm that does exactly that today. So I think, oh my goodness, it was such a huge impact on my life.
Thanks so much. Chuck, do you want to round us out with this one?
Yeah, thank you. So I didn't know I was doing this at the time, but when I joined the Collegian, there was candidate school and kind of we were on trimesters, a trimester of probation. And I had this feeling that if I wanted to make it, I had to say yes to everything that I was asked to do. And there's a saying that comes from improv comedy, say yes and figure it out. And that applies to business, and it has helped me so many times. So my first job that I had in communications, I did that at the Collegian. I ended up covering things like an airplane crash, going to Washington, D.C. to interview our senator, being a night editor when we had daily print editions 5 days a week, staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning and being the last person to sign off before the paper went to bed. All of that stuff. In my career, my first communications job, they asked who wanted to be, this is how old I am, who wants to be trained in desktop publishing? All the writers said, no, they're going to try to make me a designer. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I was like the person who was kind of the technology leader among the writers in my first communication job. When I got into higher responsibility jobs, one thing was asked, do you think you could do speech writing? Yeah, sure, I could do that. I ended up being the speech writer for the CEO of the organization I worked with, along with other duties. So I always encourage people to just go ahead and try things. Have that spirit of, yeah, I can figure this out. I can do as well as anybody else can. And you'll be amazed by the opportunities you get and the things that you end up doing in your career.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for those answers. So kind of piggybacking off of that, obviously we're all here still in college at this point at the Collegian. So what do you believe we should be doing to prepare ourselves, not only for the real world, but for our careers that some of us are going to assume like starting this summer or next fall? Yeah, anyone want to jump in first?
I can jump in on that one, and I'll be brief. Focus on people and relationships. I mean, that's one of the things that I really did at the Collegian, and it has carried me through my life. I am naturally an introvert, but I love people. And so just putting myself out there and keep focusing on people and relationships. I am still today through Facebook, probably on a weekly basis in touch with 15 of my friends from the Collegian. After all these years. I graduated in '83, so it's been a long time.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, I hope that happens with us as well once we graduate. Lean, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think I have two main pieces of advice. The first one being, I think, you're at the Daily Collegian, you have this awesome opportunity to really experiment with things and master a few skills. And I think it's really great to be good at so many different things, but it's awesome to be kind of a master at a set of few skills. And the Daily Collegian gives you kind of that space to experiment with that safely. It's okay to make mistakes. You have a lot of people there helping you learn. You have mentors, you have advisors, so that people are there to really help you, figure out what you're really good at or what you like to do and focus on that. So that would be kind of my first piece of advice. The second one being, and I wish somebody told me this when I was at the Daily Collegian, because one of the symptoms I think of college media, which is really interesting, is things are sometimes short term because of the turnover. So when you join the Daily Collegian, you know that your career at the Daily Collegian is going to end, with your career at Penn State, and with the turnover as well, positions are usually held for a year. And so I remember, I think a lot of us kind of felt into this as well, as thinking short term about what I want to do. What impact am I going to leave here? I have a year as a business manager. What can I do in this year? And I think one thing that I figured out once I graduated is it's really good to also think long term, because that's what it's going to be once you graduate. So that's when you graduate and get that full-time job, you're going to be thinking about long-term investments or long-term solutions, not like the Daily Collegian, which is a little bit more short-term. So I would just think about that, during your time at the Daily Collegian, think about projects and try to launch initiatives that will really help the Collegian after your time. And I think that's also a really good way to practice for that full-time job after you graduate.
Thanks, Lean. And Lee.
Yeah, I think so the job you get after you leave school is going to be really important. Kind of every step every job you take will be important. But I think like the first job is really about sort of getting yourself on a path, and like you can always like switch paths in life, but it's like, when you start walking down one of those paths, like it gets harder the further you get down the path. And so as it relates to like what I think I would recommend you should be doing now is I'm a big proponent of like, and maybe some of you heard this before, but like in terms of order of choice for like what you do in that first role after you graduate, like I would recommend prioritizing like pick the industry you want to be in, and then secondly, like try to find a good company in that industry, and then thirdly, like the job is kind of the third most important thing. And the reasons are like if you pick a good industry, like an industry that when I say a good industry, an industry that works for you, like an industry that you enjoy being in and that's got the right sort of growth characteristics, et cetera, like a lot of other stuff just kind of works out, because like you end up building your network in that industry and building knowledge in that industry. And it's like, even if you go to like the second point, a company that's like not the best company in the industry, you've like developed a lot of goodness that can like keep you on the path you want. I put company second because like, going to a great company just creates all sorts of opportunities and puts you in touch with like great people that'll sort of help you the rest of the way. and job third, because like if you get those first 2 points right, like the job you do, like really as long as you do a good job at that job, like as long as you just kind of crush it at that job, like stuff will generally work out for you, I think. And so so the more that you can be thinking through, like, you know, what industry do I want to work in, what company I want to work in, and then, like, you know, last but not least, like, you know, what would I want to do when I get there, and be sort of coming up with a good point of view on that, your own opinion. I think that would help out a lot right now.
Great, thank you. So since this is about networking and mentoring, I'm curious to know what is your biggest piece of advice for us on how we should build our personal network and then in turn stay in contact with those within our personal network?
Just start connecting with people on LinkedIn. Like just start searching, don't do that. Does anyone mind if I lead off on this? So another piece of advice, the reason it ties into what I was just saying. One of the best pieces of advice I got was from a woman that I worked with. I used to work in corporate development at LinkedIn, which is where you acquire companies. And when I first started doing that, I was kind of like, okay, I got to get out and like meet a bunch of people like outside of LinkedIn at a bunch of different companies and like build my network, etc. And she was like, no, that's actually not the way that you'll build your strongest network. The way that you build your strongest network is like the people you work with. Like, once again, it's about like doing a great job and establishing a great reputation with like the people that you're working with within your company. And she was like, those people, you know, because they go on, they leave, they do other things, like those become your strongest network connections. And I have seen that to be true kind of multiple times over, whether it's other people or myself. But like, people think of networking as like this, like, I got to go out, I got to like meet people at events, or like, you know, be sort of like, you know, doing things that are maybe a little more sort of like superficial than like, you know, really like the people you work with are going to be your strongest network. The extended network that I mentioned, like that, where it's like you're going out and you're talking to people, I find that's best for sort of like information gathering and like understanding like the lay of the industry. But I would, you know, make sure you invest in those coworker connections.
Awesome. Thanks, Lee. Chuck, do you want to jump in? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So, you know, my approach to networking is to build your network one person at a time. And so the idea of, you know, Lee mentioned go out and connect with everybody you can on LinkedIn. There's some people who just seem like they're just collecting people and there really isn't value. At in-person networking events, I've been out there where, you know, at a Chamber of Commerce event or something, and people are just going on like, hi, my name's Bob. Here's my business card. If you need an account, give me a call. And they just move on to the next person. And all of that's meaningless. I believe in making your connections one person at a time, whether you're at a networking event, whether you're building a relationship with somebody at your company or on LinkedIn. Little bit of self-disclosure. I manage PTSD, and I also am recently diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum. I have been building an amazing international network.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, nice to meet
you. Oh. I'm building an amazing network of people throughout the world, one person at a time, by connecting with other people on the autism spectrum, connecting with other people who are working in the mental health community. And I couldn't just go out and blast everybody, you know, hey, I have autism, do you want to connect, right? You have to form relationships.
Thanks so much for sharing, Chuck. Lean?
I remember in my junior year, I had interned for a tech startup in State College. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. Like, I love tech startups. This is where I want to be. And so I started taking more startup classes at Penn State. And one of those classes, we were following a journey of some guy who wanted to start a company back in when, you know, the tech boom was just happening. And one of the things that I, you know, learned from just, you know, reading about this guy going through his experience is that he was, because he wanted to find investors and different types and engineers and different types of people that work with him, he would literally like insert himself into spaces where like-minded people existed or people in the industry existed. And so, for example, like I was mind blown when I found that there was like literally restaurants in Silicon Valley where all the entrepreneurs hang out. And like, if you go there, you're gonna meet some of them, you're gonna make some connections, blah, blah, blah. And I think the coolest thing about today's world is that there's physical spaces to do that, but there's also online spaces to do that. And so if you're trying to find a mentor that's working in a specific industry or doing a certain thing, wouldn't hurt to kind of like join these groups, follow these pages, add these people on LinkedIn or whatever, introduce yourself, be a little personable as well. Like Chuck mentioned, it's definitely don't want to, reach out to everyone that you find and send like the same message over and over again. But like literally inserting your places into spaces, in spaces where there are like-minded people or people that you aspire to be is a really good place to find mentors.
Awesome. Thank you for that input. Looks like Jade put a question in the chat. How do you recommend students build a network or mentor relationship that's meaningful and will last beyond college? Anyone want to jump in first for this one?
I can go. I think to build a really good mentor-mentee relationship, there's a couple of things that you want to do up front. So firstly, find the right mentor. Obviously, we've just shared a couple of ways that you can do that. Look for the right people that you think would be helpful in whatever you're trying to achieve, whether it's like landing the right job or other life goals as well, learning how to invest, if you want to buy a house, whatever it is. And I think, once you found these people, setting expectations about that relationship is really important upfront. Talking to that mentor and then both of you kind of talking about what you're trying to achieve out of this relationship is really helpful. Other things that you can do as well is be really organized about the relationship as well. Setting certain meeting points, meetings on your calendars to make sure that you guys are staying in touch, putting reminders for yourselves, maybe making sure you have an agenda every time you meet, but like being organized about the relationship also, helps keep it on track. I think, especially when you're a student, when you have all these things going on, school, the daily Collegian, all the other activities that you're doing, it's really easy to forget your mentor for a little bit. But being organized about the relationship really helps kind of stay in touch and, achieve all the things that you wanted to get out of this relationship that you have.
Awesome. Thanks. Lee?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would maybe add is like, I guess just try to find someone who really invests in sort of understanding like what you care about and what you what you want to do. Because I guess what I've found is like sometimes you look for someone who's a mentor who overweights on their own experience and what they want, and they kind of project that on you. And like I found myself in a few situations where it's like former managers I've had, like I'm like, I don't even want to like have this conversation because like I feel like they're just like judging me because like I'm still at this company they used to work with or work at or something, and like it's just like not a good experience. Like the more positive ones have been where it's like you have someone who doesn't just assume that like you should want what they want and like kind of puts himself in your shoes and gives you advice through that lens. Otherwise it ends up being kind of like a, it's just like, why aren't you doing more sort of thing, or doing something different, which isn't pleasant.
Yeah, for sure. Chuck, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I have a very different perspective on mentorship than I think a lot of people do. So, I work as a professional coach. People pay me to meet with them on a regular basis, give advice and guidance and do all the things that a good coach does. From a mentorship point of view, this may be anathema, but I believe that mentor relationships are transient and people should have different mentors to help them with different aspects of their life. So, officially, I still have 2 students that I'm mentoring at Penn State. I've reached out to both of them like 3 times saying like, hey, I'm still here, happy to talk with you, and neither have responded. So, and I'm not offended by that. We had really good conversations. They said it was helpful. I think it was helpful. But they're probably at a different point in their life and maybe they need different mentorship. So, I would say connect with people who will give you advice when you need it. Stay in touch, but don't become dependent.
Yeah, that's a really great perspective. Kind of leads me into the next question. You can share as much or as little as you want. Kind of just curious if you can tell us about a specific experience you've had in your life with a mentor, and how that relationship has sort of worked. So that way we can kind of get some advice as to how we should go about forming and then keeping those relationships.
So I'll just piggyback on this one because this is kind of a fun story. When I was in high school, I worked in a family car repair business and fixing cars, and I was not planning to go to college at all. One of our customers was a labor negotiator for the state of New Jersey, really high power type A personality. And he kept saying, you need to go to college, you need to go to college. And I said, no, I don't want to go to college. He goes, what about Penn State? Penn State would be great. You should go to Penn State. And I was like, well, I like the football team, and I've heard good things. And the next thing I know, he was introducing me to one of his friends who was on the board of trustees at Penn State. They both wrote letters of recommendation. They kind of, guided me towards going to Penn State. And I was like, yeah, what the heck? I can always go to college and come back and work on cars. So he stayed my mentor from my high school years until he died when he was in his early 30s, or I was in my early 30s. But I didn't check in with him all the time, but he was always in my corner, always pushing me ahead. That was really my best mentoring experience. And probably I've never had a mentor like that since.
Wow, that's awesome. It was so long too. Lee?
Yeah, and maybe I think there might have been an element of this in what Chuck said, but try to check in with people when you don't need something specific, just to catch up. And so there's not always, asking for stuff or asking for advice or specific stuff. Just try to keep in touch with people generally, as opposed to like making it transactional. That's one thought I had.
Awesome. And Lane?
I think one of the first mentors I formed at at my time at Penn State was actually one of my professors, Professor Sasha Meinrath at the College of Telecommunications. It started off as just, chit-chatting about random stuff after class, like, hey, I saw you said this, I thought this was really interesting, or actually I read an article about it. We would just I guess geek out over different techie things and just talk about, different things in media as well. And then over time, our class ended, we continued talking, we started talking about more things. I would discuss some of the things we were doing at the Daily Collegian, get some advice from him. We would talk about my career goals and how I also wanted to be in tech. And he ended up working with me on my thesis. So it was interesting, but I think it was just, we had similar interests. We liked the same things. I saw that. We, reached out, we talked about similar things, and we still talk to this day. One of the most important people in my life, heavily impacted a lot of decisions, really got me through a lot of things. I think he's awesome, but he was a professor. And I think that's okay too. A lot of the adults that you meet at Penn State are going to be professors. There's not a lot of other adults around there. So it's totally fine for your first mentor to be a professor at Penn State.
That's awesome advice. I do have some more questions, but I really want to open it up to our audience here. Some of our colleagues at the Collegian. Does anyone have any questions for any of the panelists? It can be a specific panelist or for all three. Don't all jump at once. If you can't unmute, you can feel free to put one in the chat too. Sorry, Jade, go ahead.
Yeah, you're good. I'll ask another question. This kind of went off of what Lee was talking about, what he just commented on about making a transactional relationship. Because sometimes when I'm working with people who I'd consider my mentors, it almost feels a little bit like it's a one-way relationship where I'm just oh, can you help get me opportunities? Like, can you help me do this? And I know, like, obviously in my position, I'm not a professional in my career or anything yet, so there isn't really much I could offer on another side, but how would you create a relationship that doesn't feel so one-sided on like somebody just coming to another person to be like, hey, can I get this from you, or can I have this from you, or something like that?
Yeah, I'll start since I raised the point, and I guess I'll confess that, like, truth be told, I've always kind of struggled with the topic of mentoring, because I it goes back to some of my earlier comments. It's like, rightly or wrongly, like I always sort of default to like do the work and like demonstrate that you're sort of like, worth investing in, and then which is like a debatable philosophy, because like anyway, there's probably more psychoanalysis of my own psyche to do with that, but like I just being transparent, like mentoring is like not an area where I've like really like cracked the code on it. But what I would probably say in terms of like, how to sort of get around, or how to address the consideration I mentioned where it becomes too transactional, is maybe like ask if you can do just like, like, oh, would it be cool if like we got lunch like, every quarter or so, or every 6 months or so, or breakfast, or the reason I'm picking meals is because that's something that people usually do in the flow, and like, they're sort of happy to like, happy to catch up, and maybe make it about just like, sort of a more ongoing relationship, as opposed to and more about like, oh, it'd just be good to catch up from time to time, rather than like, I have this issue, can you talk about this issue? And like that's maybe one tactic to do it. The other thing, I will put in the shameless plug, like, LinkedIn is a pretty good way of like having serendipitous interactions with people. So like, people are posting, I mean, other social networks too, certainly, and not just LinkedIn, but like, people are like, the way that people use some of these platforms is changing pretty rapidly, and like it creates a lot of opportunities to like, someone posts something, you can like comment on it in a way that's like novel or intelligent, reach out to them and like, oh, it's been a while since we caught up, like, like kind of look for those serendipitous ways to catch up when it's not about an ask specifically. And yeah, I think that's just like there's more and more ways to do that now with technology. So
Thanks, Lee. Chuck, do you want to go?
Yeah, repeat the question, because I was deep in thought on something about this.
Yeah, I was just wondering how to not make a mentor relationship feel so one-sided, like one-sided just being beneficial toward the person who's like in need of opportunities or trying to make connection.
Yeah, so thank you. You got me right back on track. So one of the things that I would say I do right now is I have multiple people that I look to as mentors. And I look at, so I have two friends who I went to grad school with. One is a brand strategist for a large corporation. The other one specializes in data visualization. And I would say the three of us are mentors for each other. We get on Zoom probably once a month, and we ask each other questions, advice, and sometimes offer some unsolicited advice as people talk about what they're doing. But it absolutely is a multi-sided mentoring relationship. And I think all three of us get a ton out of that relationship. So don't be afraid to do that. When you get out and you're working in jobs, identify somebody. You would do that right now at the Collegian. You might even do it already, and you're not even considering it to be mentoring, but you're really filling those elements for each other.
Awesome. Thanks, Chuck. And Lean?
I think that, I struggle with that a lot too. Even at work, sometimes I feel like sometimes in my emails, I'm like, am I being transactional right now? Like, how do I come off as, really just wanting to build a connection with this client or develop a relationship further? And I think, especially with, mentorship in general, as long as you guys, I mean, you've talked about what you're trying to achieve from this relationship. So the mentor is like on the same page and is, if they've agreed to it, they're getting something out of it as well. So like, that's what I try to remind myself. I'm like, yeah, we've talked about this and, we share a lot of stuff in common. We talk about, cool trends in the market. We talk about this. So like, they're also getting some information, they're learning things from you as well. So as long as you put effort to make the relationship feel two-way, talk about things that, pertain to both of your careers or, things that you're both passionate about. I feel like, yeah, that would help, keep, make both of you feel like you're getting the most out of the relationship.
Can I jump in as well and offer an unsolicited thought too? I think about you guys a lot, particularly as students and in some of the mentor relationships, really with either with the AIG or other things within the college environment. I always think back to like my mentee mentor relationships at that age were different than eventually a little bit later in my career on it. So I wouldn't feel that bad as a student reaching out to your network of alumni, of professors, of anybody who is at a different point in their career, even to sound out, just to be a sponge to learn and seek more information. Because I would honestly say, like, it may feel one-sided to you, but everybody has been in that place on the other side of the table. And usually if it is somebody who is engaging with you and wants to help in some of those things, it does not feel one-sided to them. So I felt that one-sidedness like when I was in your shoes, but I would encourage you to really be there and seeking their advice and guidance and learn from them at whatever stage or things you're thinking about. But my 2 cents. So
that's a great point, Megan. And maybe like a different way to frame that is like, worst thing that can happen is like somebody won't respond, like, and you're no worse off than you were when you reached out, but like, lots of goodness can come from it. Like, so there's kind of only upside for you.
If I could piggyback on Megan and Leah, maybe I'll give you the full LinkedIn plug on this one, which is to say that the value of all of what's out there, LinkedIn and beyond, frankly, is you could do a lot of research before you'd ever reach out to someone that didn't exist. So you know not only where people went to school or where they work, but like what they are posting about on all platforms and what they care about. So, I think whether, we're talking about a mentor or just someone that you want to do business with, whatever it might be, someone you want a job from, like, do like 10 minutes of homework and you're going to get a lot of information in a hurry. Pretty obvious, but needed to be said considering all the information on even just LinkedIn.
I also want to share a LinkedIn tip since we're all talking about LinkedIn. I think one thing I tried in college that I thought was really helpful is when I was looking for jobs, but it would also apply for mentors. Like I would go and like look for the job that I want, or try to figure out what the title of that job is at that company, and go and search that title and that company on LinkedIn, and it would show me people that like have that job. So then if you're looking for a mentor, for example, in a specific job or in a specific company, you could do the same thing. And it will show you people that like work there within this with that job title. And then it'll be easy to find people that like you want to be or you aspire to be. So that's one trick I used to use when I was in college.
Awesome. Thanks for all that info. That was great. Oh, Chuck unmuted. You have something else to
Yeah,
say?
I was just going to say, while we're plugging LinkedIn, judging by the fact that people aren't asking a ton of questions, I will go ahead and I'm going to put in chat a LinkedIn article that I posted on networking for introverts, because I am an introvert, and I've had so many people comment to me privately that this has been very helpful.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, okay, sorry, not sure.
Oh, you went back to being muted.
Okay, I'm trying to post in, I must be
you're
viewing myself as I try to post this in the chat, sorry. People are more helpful than you would think they would be. And, reaching out to people one person at a time is really a great way to build your network. LinkedIn is generally painless as long as you're polite and respectful and don't just message somebody with some sales pitch like I get 15 times a day. But I'll post this and anyone's welcome to contact me if you need any more context on it.
And I'll say, I encourage everybody to follow or connect with Chuck because he's got some of the best content on LinkedIn that's out there. I'll plug LinkedIn more than Lee will out of this, but like Chuck is fantastic content and it is a great source.
Thank you, Megan. I take that compliment very highly.
I don't always comment on them, but I read most of them, Chuck. You got great stuff. So
thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks for all that input on that one. Does anyone else from the audience have any questions before I ask a few more? Anything's welcome.
Can I ask a question to the students, if
Yeah.
possible? See if they are there any students out there that currently have an active mentor relationship you think is going really well, or a situation where you found that? Or I'll take the reverse, or anybody who's got something that feels real weird. Maybe I don't want the weird ones. All right, let's just go with the great one.
I think that I've created like good relationships with my professors, and like they're in journalism and they've asked me what I want to do with my career, and so they've helped send me like job recommendations as I'm gearing up for graduation and everything like that. And then also just some people who like I have done internships with, like the supervisors there. I did an internship at WPSU this past summer, and the director there will sometimes just send me job postings within the radio business. So that's really nice. So we don't always like talk all of the time, but like when we do, I think it's really fruitful.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Thanks, Jade. Anyone else want to chime in on that from the audience? Jenna, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jenna. I have gotten the advice to make relationships with professors by like going to office hours and just talking to them whenever I can. The trouble comes for me when I go to the office hours and I don't specifically need anything and I just don't know what to say, because like there has to be some sort of agenda and I'm not sure how to create that. And then that leads into not really knowing how to advocate for myself in general with professors. So that's a perspective from like a freshman who's just trying to get into this.
Yeah, that's such a valid point. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jenna. Lean, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, but yeah, I feel like, yeah, I've spent a lot of time with a bunch of professors at Penn State mainly because I was lost. I had two majors and I didn't come into Penn State with those two majors, and I was trying to figure out what to do. So I'd spend time with my professors, like trying to figure out like what career paths are there in this major, or like what can I do with like the skills that I'm learning in this class. And so, yeah, I found it really helpful to come, like you said, with something that we want to talk about. So like an article about, an article that I saw that was interesting, or something, a lesson that I saw somewhere that I thought was, would be, suitable for the class, or I would just find like a piece of, something to talk about with the professor that I thought was relevant or helpful. And that would make the conversation flow a little bit easier, like a conversation starter, like, hey, look, I saw this thing and I thought it was cool. Makes it easy.
Awesome. Sarah, you want to share something?
I was just going to agree with some people earlier, and that it's important, like I've made big like relationships with like my internship advisor right now, and like a bunch of professors before too. I mean, if you ask a professor if they know someone, they sense people over to you. And like if you ask, I haven't found like anything negative about just asking and like reaching out and like actually building like strong relationships with like these people. Because I think it's like me and my internship advisor, like that, like best friends now. And like she's like sending me things all the time. So yeah.
Awesome. And I'll chime in real quick. I work at the Tribune Review of Pittsburgh, and the former executive editor there, Sue McFarland, she's the first person I met there. And what struck me as so crazy was how excited she was for me to be there, and how like in my corner that she was, because that's something you don't like really expect from someone who's like the executive editor somewhere. You think you're just another employee, another intern. So I think just like really being open to the fact like that people really want to help you and see you succeed. That was just super eye-opening, and I've had a great relationship with her throughout the past 2 summers. Awesome. Anyone else with questions or anything before I ask another? Cool. Let's see. Oh, we do have some comments. I'd love to see that in the chat. Great. So one question I really like to ask, sort of not as related to networking or mentoring, but something that's really important nonetheless. Want to ask the three of you what your best piece of life advice is for someone our age. Feel free to give it some thought too. I know it's like such a huge question.
I'll jump in. Lean, you on mic. Do you want to go first?
No, you go first.
So the best piece of advice for anybody of any age is be kind to yourself. You will figure it out. We put so much pressure on ourselves. Society puts so much pressure on ourselves. Our parents put so much pressure on myself. I'm 60 years old. My mother's 89. I get on the phone with her and she puts pressure on me, right? Be kind to yourself. That's the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, Chuck, I agree. It's funny because I'm 26 right now, and I feel like yeah, everybody's putting pressure on me. Like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do with your life? When are you gonna buy a house? When are you gonna get married? All these questions. Like, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm a child still. But my biggest piece of advice would be, and I remind myself of this constantly because it's like I feel like I'm running, trying to achieve things right now in my 20s. But slowly is the fastest way to where you want to be. I remind myself, like, if I want to learn something, like if I want to learn how to invest in stocks or whatever, I'm not going to learn this overnight. I'm going to have to slowly like put small goals, maybe watch a video every day or read about it, or like put small goals to get to where I want to be. And I think just, us kids in our 20s, we're just, trying to get to do things really quickly and achieve things. And there's so much pressure on us. But just remember, it slowly is the best way. Just small pieces, small goals every day, and you'll get there.
Yeah, I'll maybe build on both of the two comments, which the thing I'll add is try to figure out what really matters to you as soon as you're able. And because if you're thinking about the context of your career, the thing that I think you'll find is like there's always pressure to succeed more. Like no matter how much you succeed, if you're sort of like letting yourself be defined externally, there will always be someone who is like more successful than you and wealthier than you and like higher on the chain. And I mean, until you're like Elon Musk, basically, like, or like that ilk. I mean, like, and he probably has he certainly has his own things. But like, when I mean this, here's what I mean. Like, so like, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, like one of the things that I think was kind of liberating for me was like, a lot of the people that I know, they kind of define success by like, oh, I want to be like this level employee at this type of company. I want to be CEO at like a fast growing tech company, or I want to be CFO at a public company, or like a bunch of people that were in my orbit kind of define success that way. Which is what I was, I really struggled with, like, well, what do I want to be like? And I realized eventually I actually don't care about that framing. Like it, to me, like there'll never be like, I'll be whatever level at whatever company and that'll like make me happy. The thing that I think was important to me is like working on a problem that I genuinely care about, like earning enough to like support a lifestyle, which like doesn't include like a bunch of yachts or 6 houses or like ridiculous stuff. Like that's just not me. And like and basically feeling like I'm doing an excellent job at it. And so like the problem to work on in my case is like I work at a company that helps like people get jobs and help companies that are hiring find people. And it's like it's a really like challenging problem. It's a really interesting problem, but like, and I think it's a really worthy problem. And it's like I like working on that problem, and I feel like I can be happy working on that problem, even if like, I have colleagues that have made like multiple hundreds of millions of dollars like working at cryptocurrency companies, and it's like there are people that like, I can tell it bothers them when they look at these former colleagues and like, I don't know, that's just not what I want to do, and it's not aligned with what I value. And so good on them for like achieving that level of success. But like, I guess again, back to the original point, like try not to let that external pressure define you, because there will always be like some like higher rung if you're not sort of like true to what matters to you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for that. We do have 3 more minutes. Does anyone else want to add anything? If not, I can ask. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, like, you can always reach out to me because I will always benefit from you, because I do hire straight from college media. So if I'm plugging myself in, happy to chit chat, talk about whatever you guys want to do. I'll always find it interesting because I'll be looking at you as a potential employee. So I love talking to kids from college media. So please reach out about anything that you're trying to do. If I can help, I will. If I can't, I'll connect you with Chuck, or I'm kidding. I'll connect you with someone much wiser and has someone who has way more connections than me. But yeah.
It's not one-sided. It's not one-sided. First one, the other line usually is something they need to, don't worry.
It's not one-sided with me at all.
Aline, that's actually a really great point. Is there's the concept of the power of weak ties. So a lot of times you get more help from your friend's friend than you do from your friend directly or your connection directly. So a lot of times just asking the question, who do you know who knows something about X? I had a client I worked with a few years ago who really wanted to work at Porsche. And that's where he works now. He loves his job. He's thrilled with it. But he started out poking around, asking friends at other companies, saying, I want to do something to work with sales data analytics in the car industry. Very unusual thing. And he didn't know anybody who did that, but somebody he knew did and made an introduction.
Beautiful. Love that.
Feel free to find me on LinkedIn if I can ever help with anything.
Awesome. If anyone else has nothing else to add, then well, we really thank you so much for all of your input and everything. And I'm sure it was very beneficial for all of us here. I know it was beneficial for me. So yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys.
you all.
Awesome, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lee, Lee, and
Thanks.
Chuck.
Nice to
Thank you,
meet you all.
guys.
Have
Nice
a-
talking to you.